Hello guys and welcome back. So in this section we'll talk about why do we need dependency injection. Okay, so let's first see this piece of code right here. So let's figure out what exactly is wrong with this piece of code. Okay, so well, if I see this code, I can say that this code is very tightly coupled on these dependency classes. So we have these three properties on this car class, that is the engine, the tires, and the doors. And each of these properties is equal to a new instance of a particular dependency. Like for example, we are newing up an instance of a class engine here to get the engine for this car. Then we are using a factory to get the tires, and then we are also using some other factory of some sorts to basically get the doors for this car. Okay, so this code is a bit brittle. Okay, because if there is a change in there is a change in the implementation of engine, or suppose engine takes in an argument now, then in that case the car class would fail. Okay, then it's very tightly coupled with the classes here. So uh, whoever is the developer of this car class has to provide all these dependencies here. So right now these dependencies are just three, but if there are other such dependencies, then we'll have to make sure that all these dependencies are there while we design this car class. Okay, and this cannot also be unit testable. So if I wanted to test this car with an engine of different horsepowers, I won't be able to do that. Same is the case with the tires. So if I wanted to test this car with tire with different tire pressures, then I also won't be able to do that. Okay, and same is the case with doors, because all these three classes are dependencies on this car class, and there is basically no way to just provide uh, different instances of these dependency classes to the car while creating it. Okay, so is there a way to fix this? Well, it seems there is. So that's where dependency injection as a pattern comes into the picture. Okay, so if say the user of this car class was responsible for providing the dependencies here, then it would have been better, right? That way we could basically provide multiple instances or multiple types of instances of these dependency classes, and in that way we could unit test this car properly. Okay, so we as a developer of this car class or the designer of this car class won't really have to take care of how these engines, tires, and doors are created. We just need them, and the user of this car class is going to provide them to us. Okay, so basically the responsibility of creating these dependencies was moved to a higher level, that is to the one who is using this car class. And it's also easier to unit test, as we can see here. So we can provide some types of engine in the first instance and test it with these engines, tires, and doors. And then in the second instance we can also provide it certain mock engines with different horsepowers, tires with different pressures, and doors with different colors and things of that sort. Okay, so that way it's also easier to unit test. But then there is still some issue with this code. Okay, the issue is that right now we just have three dependencies on the car. Okay, but just to create this car we will need to maintain a main function like so. Okay, so that in here we'll have to basically create instances of these dependencies first, then we'll have to call or new up the car class provided with these instances of the dependency classes, and then only we'll be able to get the instance of a car. Okay, right now it doesn't seem very difficult because we just have three dependencies. But as the list of dependencies grow, and at a point when say this car has let's say I have a hypothetical situation in which if this car has about 150 dependencies, then maintaining this main function would be a very big pain. Okay, so that is the issue that we are facing right now. Okay, so what exactly is the solution? Well, the solution is dependency injection as a framework. Okay, so dependency injection as a framework means that there would be some framework for us that would do all this hard work for us. We'll just have to use that framework to get instances of whatever class we want. Okay, so this particular piece of code that you see right here is the solution, and it's great because in this you'll just have to new up the instance of an injector and ask the injector for a particular type of dependency that you want as an instance. Okay, so in here the system will handle everything for us and we don't really have to do anything on our end. Okay, and that's why this is so good, and that's what Angular supports. That's what Angular is for, and that's what Angular is all about. It's all about dependency injection, and it has an injector that handles everything for us. You just have to ask it for a dependency and it provides it to you. Okay, so how exactly does it do it? Well, there are two things that play a vital role in this. First one is the injector right here, and the second one is a provider. Okay, so what exactly is an injector? Well, injector is essentially an object that provides us with an API to which we can pass some tokens. Okay, and we can also pass it some instructions as to what particular dependency do we want and what all things are that particular dependency dependent on. Okay, and then eventually this injector provides us with an instance of the dependency that we want, and that dependency that we get is basically an object. Okay, so if you have a look at this code, then you can see that injector that we have here basically exposes an API named create, to which we pass a list of providers, and these are all the providers that we have. Each provider has something that we want as a dependency injected, while it also has some dependencies on it. So say for example, if I need a car, then I'll have to provide it with some dependencies of an engine, a tire, and a door. If I need an instance of engine as a dependency, then it doesn't really have any dependency, as you can see here. Same is the case with tires and doors. Okay, so these are all the list of providers that we provide to an injector. Okay, and these basically act as a recipe which helps injector create instances of these dependencies for us. Okay, and then eventually we can simply ask the injector to get an instance of a particular type. Okay, so the three main and important things that we see here are an injector, which is basically an object that exposes an API to help us to create instances of dependencies. Then we have the providers that act like a recipe and tells injector how to create an instance of a dependency. And this takes a token. The token here in this case would be a car, an engine, a tires, and doors. Okay. While it also takes a map that so it takes this provider so that it can map that to a factory function that would eventually create an object for us, and that we can basically inject as a dependency. Okay, and finally we get the dependency like this. Okay, so this is the to this we specify the type of dependency that we want, and the dependency injection framework in Angular gives it to us. Okay, so this is what dependency injection is all about in Angular. Okay, and then there are some types of providers that we have in Angular. So there is normal providers like this. So if you create a class or a guard, basically, which essentially is a service in Angular. Okay, so for all these services you can simply inject them, or you can simply register them to a module or a constructor, sorry, or a component in Angular using this providers array. As we know already that module as well as as well as a component has providers that we can pass it via the metadata of that particular decorator. Okay, then we have the class providers. So if we had a class and we wanted to use that class with a particular token, like so, we can use it in that way as well. So if we have a user class and we wanted to use it um, as auth, then that is something that can be done using the class provider or providing a particular class as a dependency. Then we have alias providers wherein we can use this use existing key and provide the value of a particular class that we want to inject, but as a dependency that we have specified here in the token, that is the old service. Then we have value providers as well, so we can essentially create a constant, okay, and then use the use value key right here to provide that particular thing as a token that we specify by the provider or the provide key right here. Okay, and then finally we also have a factory provider. So this basically can be very useful in cases wherein you want to have different instances in case of different environments. So say for example, if you have an environment like prod and dev, and in prod you want an instance of some other service as a dependency, while in dev you want an instance of a different service, then you can essentially use a factory provider as you can see on the screen here. Okay, so these are all the different types of providers that we can use in Angular, and I'll add a few links in the description of this video so you can just go through the articles that are listed down, and you can basically read them to know in detail about these types of providers and in which specific use case do you have to use which particular provider. Okay, so that was all regarding providers and dependency injection in Angular. In the next video we'll talk about the hierarchical dependency injection and how exactly is it used in Angular. Bye.